Good morning, evening, afternoon, wherever you are in the world, and welcome to USA Global TV. And you are now in Ricky's Kitchen for the United Kitchens. I would love to have you join me today. So I'm glad you're here. And as you know, or for those of you who don't know, I am a certified nutritionist, have been for 23 years. I love food. I am a foodie. I love to play with food and cook food. And in Ricky's Kitchen and the United Kitchens, here we work with intuitive cooking, which is basically if it looks good and smells good and you like the way it smells, put it in. And so we're working on happy holidays this time. So in anticipation of the holidays, we are doing a root vegetable stew for those of us in the climate that's cool at this time of year, or cold or snowy, depending on where you are. This is an absolutely marvelous either stew or soup, because I'll show you how that works in a little while. But we're going to work with a number of different things. First, I'm going to take a drink of water from my cup. If you're interested, it's on rickiskitchen.net, and you can find my Take Whisks cup, which makes a wonderful gift, by the way, for your favorite chef. And we do have an apron as well, and the book, which is Yes, You Can Eat Well and Eat Right, so which is on Amazon, or you can find it at rickiskitchen.net. That's rickiskitchen.net. So with that, welcome to this morning where I am. Actually, it's afternoon. And we're going to put together a root and tootin' stew, as I call it. The first thing I'm going to start with is some fresh garlic. And we're just going to chop it up roughly. I'm using a couple of cloves because we happen to like garlic. And so I'm using 2 rather large cloves. You can use 1, 2, or none, depending on how you like your stews or soups. But we do like garlic, so I'm going to put it in with my onion to begin the stew. And I'm going to call it a stew because actually when I've made it before, it depends on whether you put the top, literally top on the pot while it's simmering, or you leave it off. Because when we leave it off, then it thickens, and I'll show you exactly how it looks. And it becomes more of a stew because all the liquid reduces. We're going to take our chopped garlic and put it in the big pot. As you can tell, I'm anticipating a lot of soup or stew. I'm going to put some olive oil in, about at least 1.5 tablespoons, and turn my range on to high. And the reason is we are going to do what's known as caramelize the vegetables, which means bringing them up to a high heat. And actually, I'm going to put it on medium high to start. Bringing them up to a high heat so that they will almost burn. And caramelizing is really cooking them fairly thoroughly so that it brings the sweetness out of the vegetables, the natural sweetness that's there. Excuse me. Need another knife. Here we go. And I'm going to use half of this onion because I'm also using a leek. So I've got half of a large, well, it's actually a medium-sized onion. I'm going to take the skin off because it works better that way. And then I'm going to chop my onion up. Just roughly. It's a stew or soup, so we're going to chop things up roughly. And let's take the paper out. Someday I'll figure out how to use the onion skin for something, but not right now. And we're going to chop that up and put it in there with the garlic to begin the soup or stew. It's funny, I keep calling it soup, and you'll have to forgive me because I've done this before and we've made soup. But this time we're making it into a stew, as I said. since we're going to leave the the top off the pot. And I need to take one more layer off this onion. Sorry about that. Okay. It'll be a lot easier to cook and taste once I get this other layer off. There we go. Sometimes that happens. Yeah. And as I said, I'm just chopping it up roughly. And the reason I'm using about a 6-quart pot, or at least a 4-quart pot for this, is you want room for it to simmer, and you want room for everything to caramelize up the side of the pot. And I can hear the garlic starting to sizzle, so whoops, another little piece of skin there. So I'm going to take my onion and bring it over. There we go. I think you can hear it starting to sizzle, which is a lovely sound. And it's also going to start filling the kitchen, which is why people gather in the kitchen, with the lovely aroma of onions, garlic, and olive oil together. So our next little goodie that's going to go in is half of an acorn squash. Now, I am a proponent, if you've seen the show before, of scrubbing, not peeling. And if it sounds strange to you, this is a little baby acorn squash. I'm going to take the seeds out. Normally, I would take the seeds and roast them, but there's not really enough in here, and we're just going to take them out and clean it out so that we can put it into the stew. There we go. Boop. Okay, so we're going to cut this up. Since we're going to put it in with the peel, I'm going to cut it into bite-sized, small bite-sized pieces. And please don't worry about it, because what you're doing with adding the peel is adding fiber to your whole stew. So I'm going to cut it up and into little bite-sized pieces, as I said. And just we're going to put it in right in there with the peel. And I spent several years manufacturing very hearty soups and stews. And one of the things that was really satisfactory was when people came back for more, they would purchase the quarts and pints, and they kept saying they're losing weight eating the stew and the soups. And I realized, of course, as a nutritionist, that what they're doing is they're getting more fiber than they usually would get. Okay. Woohoo! We're going to have to mix that up a little bit. I've turned it down to medium high. I think you can hear it sizzling, which is a lovely sound. There we've got onion, garlic, and acorn squash, excuse me. One of my favorite vegetables, especially around this season and for stews and soups, and even around something like lamb or roasts, is parsnip. Looks like a yellow carrot, and we've got a real orange carrot here that is going in as well. But I'm going to cut the parsnip up into little bite-sized pieces. And since this is such a big one, I'm going to have to slice it down the middle. And maybe one more time or twice to make it into bite-sized pieces. You can do your pieces as large or as small as you like. I like them in bite-sized pieces so people don't have to struggle with chomping into a piece on a spoon or a fork, as it were, that's really too big. So there we go. There. Because a lot of times, the dishes that I make, we have a lot of company, and we feed a lot of people. So here goes the turnip. And actually I'm down to about medium. Depending on your range, depends on what heat you want to put it on. I'm going to do the carrot, and then I'll let you take a look at what's going on over there. And I will show you the finished product. And actually what's neat about this, either as a stew or soup, is that you can eat your finished product within half an hour of starting it. Whoop. Let's say half an hour to 45 minutes. And in addition to the onion, I'm going to put in some leek, which I have already thoroughly washed, both the white parts and the green parts. I'll give the green parts a little slice down the middle. Make sure you open up the leeks when you wash them to make sure that there's nothing lurking inside the top leaves or within the bottom. The combination of the flavors of leek and onion I happen to absolutely love, and I think that you'll find that it gives stews and soups a wonderful flavor. Now, this is the thing. I'm going to use a beet. Actually, the recipe originally called for gold beet so that it wouldn't actually turn the stew or soup as red as it gets. But since I couldn't find gold beets at my favorite market, we're going to use a red one. So, and I'll show you in a couple of minutes how that does definitely color the whole thing. And let's see, I think I'm going to use just half of this lovely beet because it's quite large. And as soon as we get this in, I'll show you what's going on in the pot and how it's going to caramelize and bring out the sweetness of all the vegetables that we're putting in. And if you notice, I'm cutting on top of a paper towel because I have a wooden chopping block here, and beets tend to stain, although it will come off. But there's my beet. So far we've got a whole bunch of goodies in there. I did find something that's also seasonal, Jerusalem artichokes, which are actually not artichokes, and I have no idea why they're called that, but they're seasonal, and I find them absolutely delicious. What else we're going to put in today is a turnip. I'm going to use half the turnip, same as I did with half the beet. And the reason is I'm using more veggies today, more root veggies, different ones, than I did for the first batch that I did yesterday. But you can use whatever vegetables you want to put in this, the root vegetables, and be well assured that everybody's going to enjoy whatever you put through there because it tastes absolutely marvelous. And we're going to get over there with our turnip. I also was looking for rutabaga because rutabaga, unlike turnip, has a little bit of piquancy to it, so it would be a little bit spicier. Okay. All right. Now I want you to see what this looks like because this is where the caramelizing comes in. Let's see if we can get over there. There we go. So you can see how we're beginning. You can see that the onions are browning. And we're beginning to get a little color from the red beet, which is interesting. And what I'm going to do is keep it up on a little higher heat so that it begins to almost stick to the pot. That's what we want because that's the caramelizing. And I'm going to add another root vegetable, one of my favorites. Let's come on back here. Hi again. I have a carefully scrubbed sweet potato that I'm going to put in as well. And let's cut this one in half first. Whoop. This is actually a garnet yam or sweet potato. It's actually a garnet sweet potato. And sometimes they're purple and sometimes I get the other ones that aren't, but we're just chopping it up, skin and all. Remember, I've scrubbed these first. So here we go into the pot. It's so pretty. And a wee bit of celery never hurt anybody's stew or soup. So we'll put some of that in. And give it a mix. Excuse me. Okay. So we have onion, we have carrot, we have, turnip, we have sweet potato, and right here I have an accumulation of little baby mushrooms. I've got baby bella mushrooms, and I've got little teeny tiny red potatoes. The tinier the better. And I'm going to cut the bigger ones in half because I want them really small. They're all probably the size of way smaller than a golf ball. Okay, so we've got the potatoes, and I can hear my sizzling. Okay, and if you've noticed, I haven't put any salt in yet, because most of the time root vegetables have quite a bit of their own salt, but we will add some salt. And I'm using kosher salt, the big chunky kind. I'm going to cut up my Jerusalem artichokes. Oh, and one of the things that I've used in some of the stews and soups before has been, believe it or not, daikon radish, which interestingly, when you cook it, turns translucent. If you're familiar with daikon, it's a medicinal big white radish. It also comes in red, but usually you see white. So this one's got Jerusalem artichokes instead. And now what I'm going to do is put my potatoes in as soon as I caramelize here. Okay. What I want you to see is what the vegetables are doing in there. And they're really, you can see they're turning red, which is absolutely lovely. And they're beginning to almost stick to the top, which is what we want because it's up on high, which helps bring out the sweetness of the vegetables. And if you're wondering why we haven't put any liquid in, that's what I'm about to do. I'm going to take my hot water and measure 2 cups. You can see it's steaming, so it's boiling water. And I've got 2 cups, but there's one thing missing. And I'll show you what I'm talking about. Because I happen to like a wee bit of either chicken broth or beef broth. And today we're going to use beef broth. If you want to make this a vegan soup, you can use just plain water. You can use a veggie broth or veggie bouillon, or you can even use a mushroom bouillon. So what I'm using today is beef broth to make it have a little bit deeper, richer flavor. And I'm going to take about a tablespoon, which is about all that's left in here, which equals about 3 teaspoons, which would be about 3 cups of the broth. So I'm going to take this within the 2 cups of boiled water. And the reason I'm using boiled water is twofold. Number one is that it helps dissolve the base that I'm using, or if you're using a bouillon cube, it will help dissolve it much quicker than putting it in the middle of the whole thing and having it get lost in there and wondering when is it going to dissolve. And I'm using the boiling water because it does not stop the cooking process once I put it into the vegetables. So let's show you what we're doing over there. As you can see, it's steaming. I'm going to take this and carefully put in, because you don't want to burn yourself. So we've got the 2 cups. You can hear it calm down a little bit, which means it stopped the caramelizing, and now it's going to begin to simmer shortly. And we'll give it a couple of seconds here because, as I said, it's boiling water that does not stop the cooking process. And that, there you go. I think everybody can see that. It's simmering. And I'm going to take another 2 cups of boiling water and give it a little more mix. And carefully add that. Okay, and here's where we will add about a teaspoon of the kosher salt. Just roughly a teaspoon. You don't want it too salty. One of the things that I have always found in restaurants, of course, you do use salt to help bring out the flavors of the foods that are used. But one of the things that I have found, and I'm sure you've experienced the same thing in certain places, is that the commercial soups are way too salty. So we're not going to use a lot of salt because everybody can add their own salt. I will add some pepper shortly. I'm going to put my little potatoes in now and let them start to bubble. And I'm going to carefully, I've taken my baby bellas, I'm going to cut off the stems. They've all been wiped and washed. And of course, you know, you don't really wash the mushrooms unless you use a cloth or a mushroom brush, because you don't want them, they will absorb whatever water and get soggy that you use. So this one's fine. And as I said, I've got the baby bellas. They're little tiny guys. And I've got about a dozen, roughly. Let's see. And you can see they all fit in my hand, so they're little tiny guys, and we're going to put those in. And mix them around. And now what I'm going to add are a couple of different things. I'm going to add about a tablespoon of paprika, just roughly, maybe a little less. Whoops, well, okay, there we go. This is one of those jars that doesn't have a little sprinkle top on top. So we're adding paprika. I think we got the range as well. I'm going to add a little bit of coriander. I've got the ground coriander seed, and I'm just going to sprinkle maybe not even a quarter teaspoon of it. And then I have my dried basil. We're going to do about a tablespoon of that. And again, as I said, whatever spices you want to put in, these are the earthy ones that we like. So that's why I'm using them, the paprika and the coriander and the basil, which is kind of a strange combination, but it works. And then I'm going to put in 2 bay leaves. as it were. Okay, and let's get that all mixed up in there. Ah, yum. Okay. I'm going to turn it down to medium high and let that simmer while I take the paprika off my hands and take my little mushroom stems. And now for our next goodie that can go with this, or you can use this as a separate meal. Take a small drink. Water is wonderful. And I have 2 fresh cauliflowers. Well, what we're going to do with the cauliflower is we're going to take it and roast it. My oven is heated up to 375 degrees, and that's Fahrenheit. And I'm going to take my small Pyrex baking glass dish, put a little bit of olive oil in it. Or you can take something like a parchment paper and line it with parchment if you like, if you don't want to use any more oil. I happen to like the oil in there, so I'm going to spread that around. You can use a paper towel or you can use wax paper, whatever it is, but make sure you line the bottom of it with the oil. And the reason is you don't want the cauliflower to stick. And I'm going to take my cauliflower and mix up a marinade to put on top of it. Actually, not really a marinade. It's going to be a sauce that goes on it. Very simple and very elegant for serving. I'm going to cut it into about 1-inch thick steaks. And let's see if I can get this one. Cauliflower, as you know, falls apart when you cut it, but we'll be careful. Here we go. And I'm going to put it carefully into the pan. And let's just get that in there. Okay, we're going to cut a little piece. And of course, whatever comes off, you can always throw in the soup, by the way. When all the crumbles that come from cutting the cauliflower. Okay, let's see if I can cut another nice steak from this one. Here we go. When I was a kid, I always thought these were trees along with broccoli. So I'm taking my cauliflower steaks, cut about 1 inch thick, and putting them in my lightly oiled baking pan. You can use a cookie sheet as well. I'm going to put as much as I can in there. And now for the marinade. Very, very simple and easy. Soy sauce, Dijon mustard. And as soon as I get the cauliflower out of my way, as I said, I've heated my oven to 375. And I'm going to take about a tablespoon or a little bit more, because I've got a bunch of cauliflower in there. So I'm going to take maybe close to 2 tablespoons of Dijon mustard and about a tablespoon of actually I'm using low sodium organic soy sauce, roughly a tablespoon of that. And we're going to whisk that up, my favorite tool. We're whisking up something really good in the kitchen. And you can see it. Let's get that closer so you can see. We've got this lovely brown sauce to spread on the cauliflower. And if that's too simple for you, I'm sorry. This really makes a delicious tasting steak of cauliflower, especially for vegans or vegetarians. And all I'm doing is coating the top one side of each of the pieces of cauliflower that are in here. And I said they're about 1 inch thick. And we will just pop that in the oven. Okie doke. Yeah, it's up to 375, so that will roast nicely. And we're going to time that to about 15 minutes. Meantime, let's go back and see how our soup is brewing, because I will show you the finished product very shortly that we did yesterday. As you can see, it's bubbling beautifully. Now, my choice here is to either let it bubble with the top off, and we'll have more of a stew, because the liquid will reduce, and as it reduces, it concentrates the flavors. I'm going to give it a taste, since I did sprinkle in a bunch of herbs and some salt, and I think we'll add a little pepper as well. Fresh pepper's always good, unless you have somebody who doesn't like it or is allergic to it. There we go. And we'll just mix that in. Stir it up really fine. Oh, yum. Okay, there we have the soup is bubbling. And what I'd like to show you now, if we get to the other camera. Here we go. Hello. I'm going to take the cauliflower, the little bitty pieces that are left over here, and just put them in the soup or the stew. It's just another vegetable which goes in. It may not be a root vegetable, but it sure is yummy and good for you. So there we have it, and I've got some pieces of cauliflower here that I'm actually going to chop up and put in as well. Now I could do more steaks if I wanted to, but that's going to be plenty. So this is going to chop up nicely, and I can just put that right in with the other veggies and make it even a thicker, more delicious, and more nutritious stew or soup. Here we go. Let's see how our time is going. Yeah. As I said, the stew or soup, whichever you like, good marinade, will be ready in about 15 minutes. And I'll show it to you again, because of course all that nice white cauliflower is going to turn red due to the beet that's in there. If you can find gold beets in your market, please use those, unless you want to make it more Christmassy and have it red, which is fine, which I'm about to show you as soon as I mix this up a little bit more, stir it up, and give it a taste. Oop, let's just... Okay. Ah, that is hot. Ooh, interesting. This is one of the first times, one of the only times that I've actually used the beef broth in there rather than the chicken broth or just a vegetable broth. And it does give it a different flavor. So as you can see, we're kind of experimenting or just intuitively putting things together to get you a really hearty and nutritionally wonderful. Remember, it's full of fiber, so that helps with the nutrition, as well as the flavors are really deep and rich. So let me show you what yesterday's came out like, which is the one in which I used the red beet, no gold beets available, And we used a little bit of cauliflower, but it's very interesting because it came out red, and that's due to the beet. But you can see the mushrooms. You can see, let's see what it looks like. There are tomatoes in there, but there aren't. They actually, it's very interesting what happens to the daikon radish. It becomes almost translucent. Well, it does become translucent. And normally you would eat daikon raw in a salad or something like that. But this is really very interesting, and it has this beautiful broth. And there's your stew. And this one's cold, but I'm going to give it a taste just for fun. I have to tell you, even cold, it's good. So there's a combination of flavors. And yesterday, here's an alternative for you to use. We used the, as I say, the daikon radish, and today we use the parsnip. So that's a difference. And in this one, I have the onions, the mushrooms, the potatoes, celery, carrot, and, oh yes, of course, the acorn squash. Now, you'll see the acorn squash, that's the only thing that's actually got any green on it. And there's a little piece of it. I think you can see it. And don't worry about the skin being tough or hard to chew, because it cooks beautifully in the water. So let's check our stew now. It's bubbling away beautifully. Here we go. And since we've got about 10 minutes, or actually that's been on for closer to the 30 minutes, which is perfect, because one of the things I love about this is that the vegetables will cook, but as you put them in, I put them in order of what needs more cooking first. So the beet went in, the onions and the garlic and so forth went in, and then the potatoes and the mushrooms, which really don't need as much, went in later. So it's the order in which you put them in the pot that helps them cook to a certain tenderness. And what I love about this is if you were to take it off now and plate it, the vegetables would still, some of them would still be almost al dente and not squishy and not, soft and mushy. There's another alternative for this. If you were to take it and take an immersion blender and let it cool down a little bit if you want to, but take the immersion blender and just put it in about 2 or 3 times so that you're blending some of it. And it will help also to thicken the stew. So that's another alternative you can do. Right now, we're getting lots of liquid on top, very much more than what I had yesterday. And I can leave it this way. This is beautiful. Okay. And again, of course, you have a choice of the spices that you put in. So with this one, I used just the paprika and basil and salt, and not even any pepper. I just wanted it sweet as possible. So the basil and the salt and the, what did I use? Oh, I know. I used basil and a little bit of paprika. So it has more of a tangy sweetness. This soup will be a little more deep in flavor, or stew will be a little richer and deeper because I used the beef broth. In this one, I used the chicken broth. So you can vary it according to your tastes, which to me is very important because we all have different tastes and ideas of what we like. So what I'm waiting for now is the cauliflower, and we'll see that in just a minute. I can take it out. It's been in there for, about 6 minutes. And let's see how it's doing. I'm going to turn it up just a tad. And remember, it's thick, so it does need time to cook. And what I'm going to do is we'll turn it over as you would a steak, or any other kind of meat that you're using, even if you're using something like portobello mushroom, which would also be good with the same kind of marinade, the Dijon mustard and the soy sauce, which, as I say, is a very simple and easy but very flavorful marinade and sauce. So, do we have any comments or questions out there? Because right now, this season, what you can do with all this is prepare it ahead of time. So I thought I'd just let you know that it is freezable, and it will, if you put it into a container. I usually prefer glass, but this one is in a good plastic container where I'm leaving at least an inch on the top so that it will expand when you put it in the freezer. But this is perfect if it's ahead of time, if you anticipate having company for the holidays. And it's really very interesting because I just got some feedback, literally, from one of my people in the audience who's been with me for quite a while. And she said she made the Tuscan bean soup, which we made last week. And she said everybody just loved it. And they ate all the vegetables. And here's the key. Part of her family doesn't eat vegetables most of the time. So whatever we did with the Tuscan bean soup came out great. And they loved it. Her company loved it as well. So please remember that you can freeze if that's what you want to do with it. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take the cauliflower steaks out so you can see how they're doing. And I'm going to flip them over. And we'll put some of the sauce on the second side. Yeah, just a couple of minutes. Here we go. You can see how they're starting to actually brown. And let me get, here we go. I'm going to reduce the heat on the stew right now down to low. I'm going to carefully, I hope, turn the cauliflower over. And it should be browning on the other side. It will shortly. Here we go. This is the fun part. Same as turning meat or whatever else you're using. Ah, it smells divine. Ah, yes. Helps to work with two hands. Except for one piece. And sometimes that's a little stubborn piece of cauliflower, so we'll just flip it over. Here we go. And I will take my wonderful, easy sauce. Simple, simple, simple. And what's amazing is people absolutely love this. I have served this at parties, and they'll say, "What is this?" Of course, they know it's cauliflower, but it's the marinade that makes it. And you can vary the sauce with a couple of different things if you wanted to. But this is just so simple. I really enjoy doing this, and I've gotten such great feedback, literally, that it works every time. Now, what I'm going to do is put it back into the oven and for at least another 15 minutes, but I want you to see how pretty this is. So we'll take it over. There we go. And remember, it's hot. So there we go. I'll bring it up to this camera. Whoop. There we have it. And it comes out a little bit browner when it's finished. I'm not sure we have enough time left to actually let you see the finished product. I'm going to turn it on for another 15 minutes. Because remember, those cauliflower steaks are at least an inch thick. So they do need time to cook all the way through. They will come out not mushy, they'll come out baked or roasted so that they're still fairly, not really solid, but cooked through like a piece of meat. So if you're having vegan friends, or if you're a vegan or vegetarian, it's a absolutely perfectly wonderful thing that you can serve to yourself and vegan friends. We're going to take one more look at our stew. It is reducing. And I believe you could actually finish it right now if you were ready to eat and just serve it hot. I may have someone here shortly who will be tasting, but I just want you to see how pretty it is and how it's reducing beautifully, but it still has plenty of liquid if you were to serve it as a soup. So let's see how that looks. Let me take 1 cup and we'll put it in so you can see this one. It's a little different from the other one. Here's our liquid. And this time, since I do want it to boil or to simmer, I'm going to turn it way down to low. And you can see the difference in just a second. Oops. I get us on the right camera. There we go. You can see that this one, the color of this one is a little bit different because I didn't use as much of the beet. This one got to simmer a little bit more and reduce a little bit more. So I've got soup and stew, and they're both from wonderful root vegetables that are really good for you, great for your digestion, great for your health. So with that, I would like to thank you for being here. Thank you for watching USA Global TV and for watching the United Kitchens. And I want to wish everybody a happy Hanukkah, which begins this weekend, as well as happy holidays. And Dr. Jacqueline, are you there? Let's come back for a minute. And to reach me, and of course, to find your Take Whisk cup and to pick up your Yes, You Can Eat Well and Eat Right, which will give you some of the recipes that we do on the United Kitchens, as well as some other recipes that I've created in the book. It is available on Amazon, and it is available at rickiskitchen.net. That's RICKIS kitchen, KITCHEN.net. So happy holidays, everyone. Stay safe and hearty appetite. Thank you so much.